my channel. Today we are continuing our series on how to simplify your homeschool in order to connect with what matters most. Now this is video 2. In video 1 we talked about vision planning. We talked about how important it is to begin with the end in mind, to know where you are headed in order to be more intentional with the time that you have and ultimately save you a lot of money in selecting the right resources and curricula that are specific for your family's goals. We went step by step through that process. I gave you specific questions to ask and to kind of reflect on and kind of work through that process with you. And at the end, we ended up with a mission statement and a prayer for our homeschools. Now today, we're going to look at how to make it all happen. So now we're looking at the big picture. And by big picture, I am referring to grades K or pre-K through 12. Now, big picture for you may be grades 2 through 12 or grades 3 through 8, depending on what your specific goals are for your family. Now, I called this system the bucket planning system. And the reason for that is because we are creating bucket lists. Now, why do people create bucket lists? When we think about the bucket list at the end of your life, or some people create a summer bucket list or a winter bucket list. The whole point in a bucket list is to list all the things that you want to accomplish within a designated amount of time to make sure that you are intentional and focused with that particular time that you have. So you don't want to find that you get to the end of all this and you checked off all the boxes, but you didn't fulfill what mattered the most. And so the question is, what matters most? Now, we've already identified it in our mission statement, but the next thing we're going to do is look at the specific subjects and how we're going to flesh it all out through our different subjects that we're covering. Now, the first thing that you will do is you're going to look at your specific requirements. What is required by your state or province or wherever you are? You do want to start there because those are part of your bucket list. That is something you have to do. It is your obligation to your state or to the place that you live to accomplish the specific things legally. And then anything else that you add on to it will be part of your bucket list that you create. So I have subject overviews that pretty much target each of the subjects that are requirements in addition to other subjects and topics that you may choose to include that are specific to the Charlotte Mason philosophy of education, the classical model, anything like that. Just other topics that you may say, hey, I really want to explore this with my child or with my children. So I put it here for grades 1 through 3, 3 through 6, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. And I do have a video where I explain all of this more in depth, so I'm gonna link it below and you can check that out if you want more information on this process here. But basically, you're just gonna highlight the subjects that you wanna start with, and those will be your first set of buckets. Now, I wanna encourage you to kind of combine them as much as you can to get no more than 9 buckets. So you will have a blank form like this that you will find in your bucket planner if you choose to purchase it. Again, if you do not choose to, that is fine. You can do all of this in a notebook. I'm going to take you through that process like I promised, but if it is something you want to check out and have your own copy of so that you can follow along with me and just kind of fill in your forms, and you can find that on my website. Now, when you go to open up the bucket planners, and number 3 will say the big picture. And so you'll find this document there. You can put your 9 key buckets or you can use the one that I have already put there for you. So these are the buckets that I have fleshed out in the documents there, that if you agree with all these and these work for you, you can then list your goals. A sentence or 2 in each of these buckets will help you kind of focus and narrow each of those down. Or again, you can add buckets, take away buckets, and change it up as you need to. For example, if you have a child with special needs, then you may have a bucket that will help them grow in whatever areas or challenges they have. If you have a child with specific interests or gifted in certain ways, then you may have a bucket that really explores that for that child or for your family. So things to consider. There's so much going on right now in this world and so many opportunities to explore homesteading and all these other topics that you may want to include as part of your bucket list and your big picture. Now, once you have those buckets down, and you have your key goals for each of those, then you want to flesh it out even more. And so that's where this next step is important. So let me share with you what this looks like. So my first bucket was discipleship. So you'll see here at the top, it says discipleship. And then what does that mean or look like? I love God and others. So that's the key goal for discipleship. Well, the next thing to consider is, what does that look like? How are you going to teach that? What are some specific goals that you have that has to do with that? And so I just started listing down my ideas here, such as prayer, memorizing scriptures, reading my Bible, and applying it to my life. I had to ask myself, if we say that our goal is I love God, well, you can't love someone you don't know. And so one of my goals will be to teach them about the Bible, teach them how to read His Word, teach them how to pray, and how to journal, and just really hear from the Lord and through His Word. Engaging with Bible devotionals, singing hymns and songs of praise, keeping a Bible notebook, reading and listening to missionary stories, knowing how to use a concordance, sharing the gospel with others, practicing hospitality, ministering unto others, and showing kindness and love for others. So those were some ideas there that I originally had. You'll notice that I have some blank lines there. So as things come up and I think, oh my goodness, I want to add this on here as a goal that we accomplish, then I add them in. So for example, in my bucket planner, I ended up writing there, I dress modestly. So that was something that I started noticing as I, just kind of walked around and kind of was praying more about this and what the Lord has to say about modest dressing and so forth. So I wrote it down, I added it on there, and I found a great book to go over with our daughters. And it's just something that I wanted to make sure to be intentional about, having those conversations with them as they're young, so that hopefully they would be able to use that discernment as they grew older. So there's room for growth here. You can also cross off things that you may not agree with or you want to reword a little bit. And I will say in the bucket planner, there are blank pages just like this. So you can write it in however you see fit or whatever works for you. Now again, if you're doing this on your own with a composition notebook, just write whatever your bucket is at the top, your main goal, and then list, what does that look like? What are the things that you want to target in your homeschool? Now here, this particular section is a holding bank. I am on social media sometimes and I see all these great ideas. And the first thing I want to do is put everything in my cart. And that I have found is not wise. Those impulse buys add up. And what often ended up happening at the time when I would do this a lot is I'd end up with this curriculum and then feel super guilty about not using it. So I try to use it all and would just get overwhelmed. So I shared more of that in the first video, but this became my place to dump everything. It was an idea bank. I see a great resource, plug it in here. I see an awesome idea or activity, I plug it in here under resources. So it's just a place to hold all my ideas until the following year or until I'm looking for another resource again. And then I can come in here and say, oh yeah, there's that book I wanted to target. There's that curriculum I wanted to try. And then I can start fleshing that out in my year-to-year planning. So this is my holding bank. You'll see I have all my just listed there. And then in the middle here is a tracking area. So you may or may not choose to use this. If you have your composition notebook, you may choose to leave this out or you may use it. But a few ways that it can be used is you could put year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. And because a lot of these are ongoing, you may want to make sure you're hitting all of them each and every year for 4 years. And then you can make a copy and continue on with it. In a little bit, I'll show you the individual subjects ones where you may want to put your individual students on there and then track their progress along the way. So there's a number of ways of using this, but ultimately it's about going through that process that matters the most, because now you know where you're headed. Now you know how these fit into your goals to help you support your goals and how to make better choices about the activities you're doing, the curriculum you're purchasing, and so forth. So this is discipleship. The next bucket is reading. So I actually put 2 of them here, reading 1 and reading 2. And I put all of the indicators for reading, what are our goals, And I did put things like choosing books wisely, reading a variety of genres, keeping a simple reader's notebook. You will notice if you are a member of my site for a limited time, I have a free simple reader's notebook in there for members. Go download it before it hits the shop. But that is something that I would use with my younger kids as they were learning to read, about 2nd or 3rd grade. I would do a lot of read alouds, and they would just go in there and reflect using the different page formats and layouts to inspire their thinking about the books that we were sharing and reading together. Practicing narrations, memorizing poetry, all of that is on here. And again, I have room for growth. And then reading too is as they get a little bit older, now they're reading for more than just basic comprehension. There's analysis going on. They're understanding figurative language, literary elements, reading informational text, synthesizing, research, and all of that. So it's all on here. Again, you can then find curriculum and resources that support these areas, or it may be helpful enough that you may feel confident enough to just pick your own books and pick your own ideas and ways to flesh this out in your homeschool. And so what this looks like will ultimately depend on their needs. And so that's something that really will help you make a more custom day-to-day planning, curriculum, and so forth for your children. I also want to note here that some of these have a little star, like I read a variety of genres. And so when you see that star, it's because I have extra buckets here that has all of that fleshed out if you want to go a little deeper into that. So as an example, here's a page on book genres and reading strategies. And so it has a list of different genres that you may want to target, such as poetry, picture books, fables, adventure, realistic fiction, historical fiction, fantasy, and so forth. Then it has nonfiction book genres, and then some deeper reading strategies. So these are extra forms that I included on there. You may just want to print out one per child, or for one child that may be struggling in these areas, as a way to really track their progress and make sure they're growing as readers, not just finishing curricula, because I have found that we have gotten through curricula before and didn't accomplish any of these goals. They didn't love reading anymore. They didn't read a variety of texts for fun. And so again, it gets back to being intentional about the things that are important to you. So I have these extra forms. I have one here for literary elements. So it breaks down all of figurative language, the different terms and vocabulary for poetry, drama, fiction elements. We have text structures fleshed out a little bit more. And then there are these blank sheets to record the readers that they're reading. You can put borrowed or own, and when they've read them, along with literature for type of reading log. You could list them here at the beginning of the year, put checks as you read them, and then you have a reading log of all the reading that took place. So these forms are all on there to help you stay organized. They are color-coded, so they're pink, just like these sheets are, and you can put them directly behind it if you choose, or organize it however works for you. So then I did the next process with language arts, which is your grammar, your punctuation, your spelling, and your written composition. There's language arts 1, there's language arts 2, and then again, you'll see the dots, like I learned capitalization rules or punctuation or parts of speech. And then I have these extra buckets on grammar and mechanics, and you'll see it's just checklist form here. Hope you can see this. There are the capitalization rules, the punctuation rules, and punctuation 2. So you'll notice there aren't any grade levels on this because each child is so different. But the point is that they get through these and they understand these concepts and they can apply them effectively. And this allowed me to help really target those key areas. I can see specifically which ones are they struggling with. And I don't always need a whole curriculum just to teach them that those one or two capitalization rules, for example. Something I can easily do. We can bring out our reading book and say, hey, go find examples of this rule in action. Copy them down in your notebook, write down your own examples, and so forth. So it's very easy to target those key areas and fill in those gaps so that those gaps don't get wider over the years. I went ahead and did that for, like I said, grammar, mechanics, Then we have writing genres, and these are the writing genres that I've summarized on here. I just want to give you this overview because this was something that made a lot of sense to me and what I used a lot when I was a reading specialist and an educational consultant for English language arts and reading. But what we did is we'd always start in the sensory descriptive form of writing. This was the foundation where they would use colorful adjectives and adverbs and verbs and nouns, and all of that would happen here as they were learning to describe what was concrete, what they could see and experience of scenery, a person, and so forth. So there's some examples there of descriptive writing, sensory writing, such as describing what I just said, a scene, an object, a place, a person, and writing letters, writing poetry. And then that would snowball into narrative writing. So effective narrative writing has description in it, doesn't it? And so if we have that strong foundation, then as it snowballs into narrative writing, where we write anecdotes now and dialogue and short stories and vignettes and so forth, you have that building on that prior knowledge and then being able to tell a story. Then that kicks into practical and expository writing. You'll see in effective expository writing, you do have some narrative elements in there. You do have some storytelling a little bit here and there. And then again, that description is important. And then the hardest type of writing is the most abstract form, which is your analytical and persuasive writing. So that's on this side. So this just kind of gives you a big picture. It's something that you might say, I'm going to snowball up to here in grades 3 through 6, and then move all the way up in grades 7th and 8th, or high school, however you choose to do that. But this is a form that I filled in for you all, and then there's a blank version there where you can pick and choose the ones you're going to do that year, and then your child can cross them off as they are accomplished. So just some ideas. I wanted to flesh that out for you since I did have this background, and this is something that was super helpful for me, because I have found that finding a language arts curriculum that hits all of those areas effectively has been quite the challenge. That's why I started writing my own curriculum in some areas, because I just found that there were always gaps here and there, one just focused on grammar and punctuation, and one just focused on written composition, and one just focused on spelling. And so you have all of these pieces and you're juggling through them, and some do all of them together, but if you don't have that one piece, then your child's going to struggle as you're trying to trudge along. So this really helped me target those key areas and set them up for success as we move through. Math, I did a little bit of that for you here. Again, just key mathematical concepts along with some blank lines. And of course, you can then add on what you choose. I did have an extra bucket for math if you chose to use that. That's just blank. And I felt like this would be important for someone who may struggle in math. And so you might just make key goals that they would have to target maybe over a summer break or before they hit that next curriculum. And you're taking notes, identifying their strengths, and then checking off their progress as they go. Example of that could be like multiplication facts, division facts, and so forth. You could target those areas of weakness and just really make them solid before you move on. Another bucket is the social studies and geography bucket. So we have geography kind of fleshed out here a little further, and then social studies and history. So again, if you're doing this without the planner, write those on top of a sheet of paper. What do you want them to know about geography? Think about that for a bit. What is important for them to know? I put things like learning about their city and their town and the state that they live in or their country, learning how to read and use a map, drawing a map of local landmarks, understanding directionality like north, south, east, and west, understanding latitude and longitude, and then going from the geography of their country to identifying continents and oceans, bodies of water, then different people around the world, different cultures. We did that using My Father's World, Exploring Countries and Cultures, and I shared a review on that as well. But this was important for me, y'all, because when we did that, it was something that my kids really enjoyed. So we spread it out over almost 2 years, and we were working toward our goals. So it worked. Whereas before then, I would have rushed, and I did this a few times, so I learned my lesson, but I would rush through these curriculum because I needed to stay on target with the curriculum. instead of being on target with the goals of my family and what my family needed. And so this really helped me see this is what we're working toward, and that's okay. We're still accomplishing what we set out to accomplish. Same thing with history. This was a big aha for me because I was using a curriculum that went on a 4-year chronological cycle. So basically, I went creation to the Greeks to like Reformation, Reformation to exploration, and then modern times. So it was broken up into 4. If you have that time to go through those cycles, it works wonderfully. But if you started a little bit later, if you have a child that is struggling and needs a little bit more time, or if you just enjoy the content and want to dive in deeper, then it kind of shakes things up a little bit. And that's where this was helpful, because I knew that we could approach history in a number of ways. Some curriculum companies do all of world history in 1 year. Some take 2 years. Some do it in 3, some do it in 4, some hit all 4. I mean, it just varies. And so knowing where we were here meant I could switch gears as needed and still target our goals. So keep that in mind. Don't feel stuck, because that is an ugly feeling when you're rushing through and trying to check off those boxes and saying, we have to stick with this curriculum and knock this all out. And you miss out on those learning opportunities to just enjoy it and have fun with your kids. I want to encourage you to really step back and ask yourself, what are your bucket lists? What are your specific goals? And if you're accomplishing those and you're in line with what you have to do legally, then enjoy it. Enjoy it. Do not feel enslaved. There is no way any one curriculum company can anticipate the needs of every single family everywhere. So go at your pace, use what works for you, and move forward with your kids. The next one here is science. And again, I learned about God's creation and what does that look like. I just listed out some different things. I did want to go over creationism versus evolution, because that was something that was very new to me. I was never taught about dinosaurs and where they fit into the creation model and so forth. So that's important. Biomes, animals, science experiments, going on nature studies and walks, and so forth. So I made a list of what I wanted to target with my kids. Again, you can add or take away. Some companies go 1 year into one topic. Some you could do 4 topics in a year and you pick and choose the unit studies. Again, pick what works for you and your family. And in the extra buckets section, I also have a blank list so that you can also pick and choose and target your goals there. PE and health, so being active, knowing how to prepare and eat nutritious foods. So for me personally, this was near and dear to my heart. I had some really severe chronic conditions in my early 30s, late 20s. And it just caused for a drastic diet change, lifestyle changes, but I got my health back by the grace of God. And so it's something that I'm very passionate about passing on to my children to help them see that connection between nutrition and overall health and well-being and mental health even. So teaching them how to prepare those foods, how to express their emotions in a positive way, because that's really important. Caring for their body by getting proper sleep. Also want to target learning about God's design for sex. There's so much out in our culture right now that has distorted what God had created for good. And so I want to make sure that those are conversations I'm having with my kids. Those are books that we're reading and discussing along the way. I know how to keep my immune system strong through diet and supplementation, teaching them and equipping them for taking ownership of their health, learning about natural remedies, first aid procedures, and so forth. So I will most likely be adding to this. I have my bucket planner here as I go, but these are some key areas that I want to make sure I hit. Now in my bucket planner, I took this blank form and I put specific exercises and ideas for that, like obstacle courses in our backyard, jump roping, hula hooping, bike riding, and those types of things that I wanted to do with the kids. So I fleshed this out a bit more in there. The next bucket I have here is the creative arts. I use different media to create. And it says, I build, invent, and create. I enjoy music. I enjoy handicrafts and do-it-yourself projects. I play games and puzzles and word searches. Learning about photography, that's something that I enjoy, so I'm sharing that with our daughter right now. Using digital tools to design, learning about robotics, coding, STEM projects, and then using my God-given gifts to bless others. I wanted the kids to see we create for a purpose, and we were made in the image of our Creator God, and He's given us this innate ability and desire to create something, to create beauty, to create gifts for others, and just to be a blessing with those gifts. And so definitely something I want to target. And again, I have this in my bucket planner filled with all sorts of activities and handicrafts and things I want to do with the kids before they graduate from our homeschools. So that's important there. And then my next and final bucket that I have is life skills. I'm learning to be independent. This was something that I severely lacked upon graduating. I didn't know how to manage a home, and those are things that I am still learning, which is why I'm sharing it here on my channel. I'll be talking about it more and more as I go through this process of bringing order to my home, of learning how to make a house a home, how to manage chores and homeschooling and appointments and gardening and home, all of the things, how to make it all work. I want to equip my children so that they will feel better prepared to navigate through life. I've heard that nowadays we have adulting classes because so many adults have these significant gaps in these areas. Now, I didn't have that significant of a gap. My mom did show me quite a bit. But my focus was different at the time. And I know that for many, that go through the public school system, this isn't taught in there. And so these are things that you'll have to be intentional about if you want your kids to walk out with those skills, such as learning how to manage their time well, learning how to develop good habits, how to set and accomplish goals, which is what this is. Those are things that I've had to learn to do along the way. Learning how to cook or bake, how to keep your home clean and tidy and organized. Maybe learning another language, learning how to budget, learning how to invest or using credit cards or effectively, and all of that. Celebrating special days and occasions, just finding the joy and meaning in life and purpose, and all that's in there. And again, a blank form should you choose to be more specific in any given area. So that is my final bucket. Like I said, I do have blank forms that you can include another bucket. I personally have extra buckets for specific children based on their specific needs, and so those are in their section of the binder. And I have this other form here. And then I also have this form in here for recommended high school requirements. So again, this is gonna vary, but for the most part, this is what your child will need upon graduation. And so it gives you a one-pager on here, and it shows you how everything else in K through 8 supports preparation for these goals. Then when they get here, they will be prepared for what comes next, and then prepare for what comes after as well. So that is the bucket planning system. I know when you see it at first, it may feel a little overwhelming, but I really want to encourage you to take that time to go through this process. Even if you never look at it again, working through that process will change the way you think about homeschooling and education. It'll change how you spend your money and the activities that you choose to do with your children. It'll give you more confidence to know that you are working toward your goals and you are not falling behind if you're not sticking with one particular curriculum very well. It'll help you focus on what's most important, and it'll help you identify what is most important. For many of us, we don't think about that early on in our homeschool journey. I know for me, it was just, what curriculum do I use? And show me what curriculum to use, and then I'm just gonna follow it. And that worked for a while until it didn't, until I had a child that challenged everything I thought I knew about education. And the Lord used that experience to really open my eyes to see that there was more that He had in store for us in our homeschool, in our discipleship, in this time that we have with our kids and our family. And working through this just really helped me be more purposeful with His will and praying for His leading and letting Him lead us along the way versus being led by a curriculum company. And so I've learned to let go along the way, to make changes along the way, to shift things along the way. Last year, if you're subscribed to my newsletter, I also shared that one of my children did go to a private school for a few months in there, and that shook and rocked my world a bit. But having this meant that we could still work toward the goals that we had and work toward what was most important. The Lord is so gracious and He is so good, and I found the freedom to be able to walk according to His ways, and I just wanted that for y'all as well. And that's why I created all this. I wanted to share it with you guys. For anybody that may have felt any of the struggles that I did along the way, I wanted to share this with you and say, you're doing well. Just follow Him, trust Him, let Him lead you, and be faithful. Be faithful with this time you have. It is very, very fleeting. It goes by before you know it. And if we are not careful, it is very easy to be distracted by all the things and miss out on the most important things. So create your bucket list, friends. Take the time to do that. Grab some coffee, grab some tea, whatever works for you. Get some quiet time for a couple of hours over the weekend, or just do 10 minutes a day. Focus on one bucket a day until you flesh that out. And once you have that, then bind it somehow. I was gonna do a binder, and now I've changed my mind. I really, really like it like this with my Pro Click. So I'm just keeping it in here. This goes with me when I'm learning about new curricula. I'm writing them in here. The ones that are interesting to me, I'm crossing off things that I'm like, no, that's not a good fit anymore. And I just refer to it anytime things start to get a little shaky. It puts me back on track. But then ultimately at the beginning of every year, this is what I turn to make sure that each and every year we're working toward that vision. So I'm going to share with you that process, how to plan a homeschool year. That's coming up in video 3. I hope you'll join me. Keep a lookout next week. Thanks again, friends. I hope you found this enjoyable and helpful. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. It's an easy way to support my channel. And please share it with your friend if you think that there's anybody else out there that could really benefit from this information. I'd love, love, love for you to please pass it along. But thanks so much. I'll see you next time.